everyone, it is Jazz here. It is time for me to do my August reading wrap-up. There are quite a few books for me to review today, so I hope you guys will sit back, relax, and enjoy all these fabulous reviews of these different books, and let's jump into it. First up, I completed the book Heidi by Johanna Spyri. This is a classic novel about a young girl named Heidi who was orphaned at a young age. At the beginning of the story, her aunt Data has been taking care of her, and she decides that she doesn't want to take care of Heidi anymore, so she ships Heidi off to the mountains of Switzerland to live with her grandfather. Heidi ends up bonding with her grandfather and making a new friend in Peter and also Peter's grandmother. But then Data decides that she's gonna try to make a buck off of Heidi, and she decides that Heidi needs to go and live in the city with a young girl named Clara and be Clara's companion. And then, that kind of affects Heidi in an odd sort of way because she is a mountain of Switzerland type of girl. I did really enjoy Heidi, but I do feel like I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. But first I want to talk about the things that I really liked about this book. It is really heartwarming. It is very comforting because, nothing truly bad could happen to you in a book like Heidi, which can make you feel kind of lighthearted and relaxed. I really enjoy the writing style. If you like those books with a lot of flowery language and descriptions of, just pretty fields and flowers and things like that, it is definitely the type of book that you might want to pick up because there is a lot of that in this. I start to feel conflicted with this book because it is almost too sweet. The main character is almost too angelically good. I almost felt like, wow, we're losing some emotional depth here because, Heidi is so angelically good that I don't feel like she's a real child in this. I feel like she has no, flaws of any kind. Even the things that the adults perceive as flaws are so coming from a good place that you can't even consider them flaws about Heidi. And I'm not somebody that really expects to relate to a main character, but I do expect a main character to feel like a person, not a small angel sent from heaven. Heidi was too angelically good for me in terms of fictional orphans. I mean, even Anne Shirley and Mary Lennox have some flaws. You know what I mean? It is very much about the characters learning lessons on how to be a good person, and it's more about that than actual plot, which I found that to be kind of fine. It didn't bug me. A lot of books like this that are classic books or fairy tales, that's what their general goal is, and that's totally fine. But I think that's not going to be something that's for everyone. If you're looking for something that's really strong and plot and a really emotional plot, I would say that is not what this is. And I do think in terms of plot, there could have definitely been more emotional depth and things like that involved in it, because there are things that are sort of happening, but because everything is so sweetness and light and angelically good, there's not enough of a dark element to contrast it. And I don't want it really dark because it's a kid's book, but you know what I mean? I did also listen to some of this on audiobook with the LibriVox app. If you're not familiar with that, it is a app or website you can go to where you can listen to audiobooks for free that are the public domain books because volunteers read them, and the audiobook that I found of it was pretty good. Even though I didn't love it, I did still like this, and I decided to give it 4 stars. Next up is a children's type book. It is Skit-Scat Raggedy Cat, Ella Fitzgerald, written by Roxanne Orgill and illustrated by Sean Qualls. I hope I pronounced those people's names right. I just love that this book exists at all. I think it's really cool that there is a book that teaches children about a really cool singer that they might not otherwise know about because they might not listen to older or classic music. And Ella Fitzgerald is bomb. I just really loved in this learning more about her in a short, quick way. And also I really liked how the writer wrote things in such a clever kind of, you know, whimsical way. Even if it was some of like the sadder parts about her life, they still like made it kind of whimsical and interesting and all those things. Also, the art in this is just really cool. I really love this art style. Definitely worth checking out if you like Ella Fitzgerald, if you like jazz singers, if you just want to have a children's book that's really cool with some cool art in it, and I would highly recommend it. So I gave this 5 stars. Then I completed my reread of Volume 3 of Vampire Game by Judel. Obviously, it's Volume 3. Can't go too much into detail about this, but I guess you could say the general idea of the series is that it's about a vampire named Doozle who is reincarnated into the body of a small cat type creature, and how he kind of gets sucked into the problems of the descendant of his longtime enemy, Princess Ishtar. Wacky vampire-ness and wacky, you know, princess problems ensue. I don't know, I just enjoy Vampire Game so much, or at least all the ones that I've read. This one was particularly fun because there were a lot of battles and things, and there were some mysteries and stuff revealed and all that good stuff. And even though I know some of the mysteries because I've read, you know, up to 7 before, I still really enjoyed like revisiting them because I haven't reread these in a really long time. I feel like Vampire Game is one of those things that I just can't seem to make myself get nitpicky about. I just enjoy the heck out of the story, mostly because I really love the characters and their antics and all that. So I highly enjoyed reading book 3 of this again, and I gave it 5 stars. Next up, I completed Emily of New Moon by Ellen Montgomery. This is yet again another fictional orphan story about a girl named Emily whose father dies in the beginning of the story, and she thus has to go live on the New Moon farm with her 2 aunts and an uncle, and one of her aunts, Elizabeth, is very strict, and also in this move it means that she has to go to school and her classmates are kind of malicious and not very nice. But basically the book is about her overcoming all those obstacles, still finding people that she can relate to and finding friendships, and also just encouraging herself to continue writing because a lot of this is about her wanting to be a writer. So for years and years, I've been wanting to read another Ellen Montgomery series because I'd only read the Anne books, and you know I love those. But I felt like, you know, I need to finally get around to this, and one of my YouTube friends, Mark, he offered to buddy read this series with me, and I was like, heck yes, I want to read Emily of New Moon series with you. So we are working through these books, but this is the first book in the series, and I just loved it so much. It does have some similar kind of elements with, you know, Anne of Green Gables in terms of the main character is an orphan, but that's kind of where it deviates from there. Emily is a very different character from Anne. I also would say that the Emily books have a little bit of a darker tone to them than the Anne books. Anne has some like sad bits. Obviously her life before the book starts has not been great, but with Emily I felt like she was old enough to sort of remember her parents and what having parents was like, and so that was one thing that kind of made it a sadder story. But there's also lots of underlying things that are in there with some of Emily's friends and stuff that are definitely darker. Now, I wouldn't say though that this book doesn't still have a lot of light and humor and a lot of wonderful things that do happen in it, because it definitely has those things, because I feel like L.M. Montgomery likes having that balance of light and dark to her stories, and this definitely still has that. It does have like some sad parts in it too, which are like bittersweet and just like they felt good inside. It was like, ooh, the bittersweet things make me feel things, emotions, but also there's some really just cute moments too, and like a lot of character growth that kind of happens gradually and things like that. and you just want to like root for Emily, and every time she gets like a win, it's like it makes you feel great. Overall, I was so pleased with this book. I'm really excited to continue on with the other 2 books in this series, and I'm highly looking forward to just reading more about Emily and her friends, because I enjoyed them as characters so much. So I gave this book 5 stars. I read Spider-Gwen Volume 2, Weapon of Choice. This, of course, is part of the Spider-Gwen comic book series, in which she lives on an alternate Earth where she is the spider person of that Earth instead of Peter Parker. This will go down in history as the Spider-Gwen that disappointed me just a little bit. I have to say that I might have been biased against it from the beginning. I started it and realized I didn't know what was going on, so I had to go and do some research, and apparently before reading this, you need to read Spider-Women, which I believe is actually a Spider-Woman related comic, and so it never occurred to me to even think that I needed to read this before reading a Spider-Gwen comic. And even though I love reading comics so much, that is one of the things that pet peeves me so hard. I don't want to have to read a comic from a totally other comic book series to understand what's happening in volume 2 of another series. And the thing is, I probably would have read Spider-Women anyway. Like, I want to read it. I want to go back and read it. But I didn't feel like reading Spider-Women then. I wanted to read my Spider-Gwen comic. So I thought, what should I do? Should I go back and read it? And I was like, no, it's on my to-be-read, and I don't feel like changing it. So I'm just going to push through, even though there's a heck of a ton of stuff that I don't know what is happening. Like, I caught on to it, but I was still kind of annoyed because there were characters that were introduced from that Spider-Women comic that I didn't know anything about them, and also there was like a really big plot point that happened to Gwen Stacy that happened in there, and it really, you know, changes the whole dynamic of her character and what's going on with her character. Even though I try not to let it affect my enjoyment of the book, it did kind of affect my enjoyment of the book because I was playing catch up. However, I will say that up until a certain point, this was still a 4-star read for me in terms of this graphic novel. I do think that, you know, some of the stuff, this one features this Earth's Punisher in it. I do think that could have been a little bit better executed. There were lots of things that could have been a little better structured in this, but it was still, you know, enjoyable. I still wanted to call it a 4-star read. And then at the end there, it added in this Halloween sort of special Halloween comic that was Spider-Gwen, and that thing was flipping terrible. It's just, no. I think they wanted to do something sort of Scooby-Doo-esque with it, but they missed it. They missed the mark so hard, and it just was weird, and like, I can't even explain it. It was just not well executed at all. It's not that I don't like the idea of it. It's a good idea. It was just badly executed. And so then this graphic novel dropped down to 3.5 stars. It's not horrible. It's definitely readable. I definitely still found a lot of fun and interest in it, and I still enjoyed the characters, but it's not, to me, worth more than 3.5 stars. So that's how that cookie crumbles. Hopefully I will go back and read Spider-Women and then continue on with this series, and hopefully volumes 3 and 4 will float my boat, because this one didn't totally float my boat. Next book up is Ross Poldark, book 1 of the Poldark series by Winston Graham. So this is, of course, about a man named Ross Poldark. I love how all these book titles just have the name of the main character in the title. And Ross has gone off to war. He fought in the Revolutionary War, and he comes home from war thinking, hey, I'm gonna have a great homecoming. And it is not a great homecoming. His father has died. His house is sort of dilapidated and overrun by livestock and drunken servants. The mining business his father was involved in is not doing so great. And to add insult to injury, you know, his cousin is set to marry the love of his life. And he's like, what do I do with this? And he just decides to keep on keeping on. I love the TV show that is based on this book series, Poldark. It is one of my favorite period piece sort of shows, and it is bomb. And if you haven't watched it, you need to go watch it. Now, even though I had watched the show before reading this, and the show is fairly close to what this book is, I still found a lot of really cool things that made it definitely worth reading. First of all, I do think this is a cool book basically about just normal people living their normal lives and how, you know, crazy things in life catch you by surprise and how you deal with it. And I really just find that just interesting in a psychological standpoint, also just from like an emotional standpoint with the characters. I really like that. I really liked knowing in the thoughts of characters and just understanding what their mental place was and how they worked different things out and things like that. And of course, there are several differences from the book to the adaptation in terms of like characters' ages or when certain things happen. So there was still like a lot of element of surprise. I really loved getting more information about like side characters and things like that. So I still think if you're someone like me that's watched the show, it's totally worth reading the books that the show is based on, because there's just so much like good fun info. However, I was really disappointed that Demelza, my favorite character in both the book and the show, is not red-haired. It hurts so hard. She's not red-haired in the book, so I refuse to imagine her as anything else. I digress. Another good thing about this book that I highly enjoyed was the writing style. I don't know what it is. It's just very different from any other writing style. I love when writers really stand on their own and have just like a style that is really individual to them. I feel like it's one of those books where the writer really made sure that the setting was a character just as much as the other characters, and I really think that's cool when writing a book of this type. I also did that thing where I switched between listening to this in audiobook and reading this in print, and I will say that I really enjoyed the audiobook. It is well acted, it is definitely well read, so if you want to check out the audiobook, I would highly recommend it. Now, the only thing that I would say about this that is not necessarily positive, I guess, but isn't necessarily negative, because it just has to do with my personalness. It's not about the book's quality in general, because the book was just trying to be like accurate and, you know, true to what the characters are involved in. And this book does have a lot of stuff about the mining business, because that is the business that, you know, the main character and some of the other people are involved in. And I don't know a lot about the mining business. I actually don't understand a heck of a ton about the mining business. So I will say that I was tempted to space out or scan the bits about that because I was just like, I don't really know what's happening. But it is, you know, I'm sure very well researched. I gave this book 4.5 stars because I enjoyed it a heck a ton. Wish me luck on completing the 12 books in this series, because I do really want to know what happens to all these people. Next up is Paper Towns by John Green. This is about a high school senior named Quentin, and he basically has had a crush on a girl named Margot for some time because she is his next door neighbor. They used to be childhood friends, but you know, high school happens, you go to separate groups, and that's kind of what happened to Quentin and Margot. But one day, Margot climbs into his bedroom window and says, we're gonna go on an adventure that's gonna take all night, and basically it's my quest for revenge against my boyfriend and some of my friends. And after they have this wacky adventure, Margot disappears. And the rest of the book is basically about kind of getting to know Margot and figuring out where the heck Margot is. Yay! I finally ended up reading Paper Town. So I've now read 3 John Green books. So I think that's a pretty good, you know, YA contemporary checklist thing checked off. So I did massively enjoy this book. The main thing that I enjoyed about this book is it is kind of a contemporary love story, but it's definitely done in a really cool execution that is very different from most stories of that type, because the 2 characters involved aren't together for most of the book. And it does really discuss a concept of how do you really know people unless you really invest in getting to know them? And because Quentin is kind of forced to get to know Margot through, you know, the clues, because in this book she leaves clues to kind of where she might be. Through those clues, he does get to know her, and it's about, you know, kind of finding a relationship and investing in a person beyond, you know, their appearance or the things that you think you know about them. And I think that is a really interesting concept that is rarely explored in books in general, and I really liked that idea. I also, of course, really liked the interaction with the characters. I think in John Green books, that is one of the main things that I tend to enjoy. I really just like seeing how the different characters he creates interact with each other. It's usually very humorous and cool in the fact that it's humorous, but I also think they are very quirky in a way that's believable, and I like that about the characters, and I like that about their interactions as well. This also contains a little bit of a road trip, and I do enjoy a road trip, so it wins super points for that. So I did listen to this pretty much all the way through in audiobook. I read along, but I just felt like I really liked the way the audiobook reader was reading it, because I just liked the way the reader was like pacing his reading and acting out the characters, and it really like made the funny parts super funny to me. Obviously, I enjoyed this immensely. I laughed so hard at this book. It was like insane. Like, I was just cracking up. So if you want a book that will give you a good laugh, this definitely will do it. So I'm glad that I finally checked out this super popular book. Yay! And I gave it 5 stars. Then I completed Batman: The Killing Joke. This is a graphic novel that is centered around the character Joker for the most part. It's kind of telling like a backstory sort of about how the Joker became the way he is due to one very, very bad day, and it was indeed one very bad day, and centers around how a bad day can really affect your whole entire life sometimes. And also, there is quite a bit of side drama from that has to do with Joker's crazy plans to cause anarchy that are always there. You know what I mean? So this is a super popular, big comic for sure, and I was like, need to get to that. So when I saw it at the library, I thought I'll pick that up and read it. My mom has been recommending it for a while because she read it and she thought it was really excellent, and I have to agree that it is pretty dang good. I really like the idea of it for sure. I think it's really cool, the flashbacks elements of the story and how they are really effective what's going on in the present. I also really like the ideas that it's kind of presenting at the front about Batman saying like, hey, one day one of us is gonna kill each other, and could we like not do that? Is there a way we could get around that? And I think that is a really interesting, revealing thing about Batman. I also just found it interesting for the fact that Joker is so cray-cray, and I was like, yeah, man is so cray-cray, but he's like cray-cray in an interesting way. But also I would say in the art that dude is super scary looking. Like, the way they draw Joker in the art is just like, wow. I would show it to you, but I had to return the book to the library because it's popular. The only thing that I would say about this one is that, what is that ending? Like, I understand they were kind of going for like an ambiguous ending, and I get that, but I was like, I kind of don't get the ending. So I might have to like reread this a couple of times if I ever get a chance. Like, I might actually go and purchase it and have it in my collection so that I can reread it whenever I would like, and like analyze those last 2 panels. If you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. You're just like, what just happened? I'm not sure on my rating on this yet, because I kind of want to give it 5 stars because it was excellence in comics, but I also kind of want to give it 4.75 stars because what is that ending? Last but not least, I read volumes 5 through 8 of Fruits Basket. So this is a fabulous manga series that I've started. So if you don't know what Fruits Basket in general is about, because obviously I don't want to like deeply summarize these later ones in the series, it is about a young girl in high school named Chiharu, who is of course an orphan, because that is the theme of this month. She basically ends up living with the Soma family, who has a curse put on them in which they become certain animals of the zodiac when they are hugged by someone of the opposite sex, which causes a lot of, you know, crazy antics and amusement. I'm kind of gonna bind up my thoughts on 5 through 7. I highly enjoyed these. They are so good. I feel like this series is very good at having wacky, like crazy, funny, comedic moments, and also having just wonderful emotional moments as well. So it's not just cute, it's also like cute with like another layer. And I really like that about this series, is that it's not just like cuteness or like hilarity at face value. There's also like a little like dark mysterious stuff underneath and a lot of character development underneath, and these ones definitely featured a lot of character development and things that really gave you the feels. I was just feeling all the feelings on these 3 volumes and just like, oh my gosh, his little harness broken, or I'd be like, oh my gosh, like I never knew that about that character. And of course there are lots of like fun things like family vacations and things like that involved in as well. So I really just love these, and I gave all 3 of these volumes 5 stars. Now I've separated volume 8 because I do have some like kind of different thoughts on volume 8, and this one was the one in the series that didn't get 5 stars. It still was a 4-star read. I still highly enjoyed it, but I feel like this one was not as well structured, and I feel like there is one character that was introduced in this that while I really enjoyed his character, I really do think the author could have done more with him. And there are like a heck-a-ton of characters so far in Fruits Basket as I've read. So there's always a new character introduction, and I really look forward to those because I always like knowing like the backstory of the character and stuff. But in this one, I do feel like this new character, he didn't have as much like backstory as I would have liked. And he also didn't really propel the plot. Not that this plot like propels a lot, but it could have done more. And I think even I read somewhere on like Wikipedia that even the author said that she probably would have done more with this character. So I think it's not just me. But that wasn't the only thing that kind of caused this a 4-star. It felt like a little bit more all over the place, like it didn't really know where it was going. I feel like even though not every instance in Fruits Basket so far has propelled the story necessarily, it has really, you know, emphasized the development of the characters or something like that. And this didn't really have that. It was just like fun stuff that happens to these people. I also weirdly found volume 8 really hard to follow in terms of the panels, and I don't know why that was, but there were just parts that felt like disjointed in my mind, and maybe that was just me. So I do think this one probably could have been a little better, but it doesn't mean that I didn't really highly enjoy it and find a lot of fun, just because I just love the general vibe of Fruits Basket. Like I said, I still gave this 4 stars, and out of the like, you know, heck-a-ton of books that are probably in this series, if the worst you can do is 4 stars, you're still doing pretty good. Those were all my reviews on my reads for the month of August. I hope you guys enjoyed this, even though there were a heck-a-ton of books. I probably should have made this a 2-parter, but I didn't feel like it. So I hope you guys enjoyed it regardless. And that is it for today, my fabulous peeps. Let me know in the comments if you have any thoughts on any of these books and you enjoyed them as well. And that is it for today, my fabulous peeps. I will see you soon. Bye!